Well, the first and foremost that the city has to be involved with is public safety. If the area is not safe or people don't feel comfortable walking in the area, living in the area, or working in the area, then no business is going to come there. That's the one problem we have in the city of Providence is public safety, among many others. But I think the first thing would be to do special policing in that area to make sure that it would be conducive to development. Now, what else is the city's responsibility? Well, a city could almost have an ombudsman for that project, working along with the commission to cut through the bureaucracy and the red tape that currently exists in City Hall. I'll be announcing soon a plan to streamline the permitting process, and that streamlining would include almost immediate meetings of boards that need to be, you need approvals from in order to permit those, whatever buildings would go down there. And of course, you also have to create partnerships. The city has to be involved in creating partnerships for workforce training. And we have money for that with our Workforce Solutions program, but I don't think it's worked the right way. So basically, it's job training, it's creating a partnership for that, it's certainly streamlining the permitting process, it certainly is having an ombudsman type that cuts through the bureaucracy, and it's public safety. Other than that, of course, be actively engaged in the marketing. And one of the problems with the system now is that you don't have one-stop shopping. If you want to buy the land that the commission has available, you have to go negotiate with them, and then you have to go to the city and find out what the taxes are going to be. And I don't think that's too conducive to good development. So I think that's the role of the city. And of course, other things that the city has to be involved with is trying to force the partnerships in an industry that it really wants here. And you can't treat that as much like a real estate deal as an economic development deal. And I think the more that the people who are making the decisions treat it as an economic development deal with the creation of jobs that's simpatico with the rest of the city, and the hospital community, whatever, I think we'd be much better off. I trust that question is for the 195 land. Is that what it relates to? Well, stabilizations, I've used them before, are powerful tools in the economic toolbox for a mayor or a city. And whenever a stabilization is given out, and they should be used, they can be used, there should be a process, number one, that's open, that's transparent, that is well-defined, and has a phase-out period to it that's discernible. And it also should be tremendously effective monitoring of any tax stabilization arrangement that the city might grant. And what I mean by that is that certain things, I'd have to know the deal that was presented in order to give you my feelings, but I think certainly job creation should be a part of it, and certainly so many jobs from Providence. All those things have to happen. And stabilizations can be a good tool. Many projects when I was mayor, we did use tax stabilizations on the Renaissance Hotel, which was negotiated, but I left office right before they broke ground there. But in addition to that, the 903 was one, or the other hotels that were built. So they're powerful tools. As far as exemptions go, it all would depend on who it was and what they were going to do with the land. I think the days of exemptions are gone. I don't think the tax exemptions are in the cards, but of course I'd be willing to listen to any proposal. I'm not saying I'd agree with it, but I'd be willing to have my door open and listen. What are you bringing to the city? I think that the 38 studio deal kind of soured everybody on any kind of a tremendous government involvement. But I think we can't look at that one deal and say that we shouldn't be involved in a public-private partnership to develop the city of Providence in the future. Well, that's a good question, because that's uppermost on people's minds. And the first duty that a mayor has is to protect the people of the city of Providence and the people who come here to visit or work. And right now, as you know, because of the high deficits and the terrible economic situation the city of Providence found itself after the $110 million deficit from 2 administrations ago, there's a depleted police force. So you have to add more police officers. But how do you do that? You have a $1 on the tax rate brings in about $7.5 million. Usually brings in about $11 million, 10.5. But that's if you don't stabilize that's if you do not stabilize the commercial tax rate, which we cannot afford not to do. We have to stabilize that rate. We can't raise it any higher. So I think we can't arrest our way out of these problems that we have. Sure, we want more police. They cost a lot of money. We're going to have the police department up to about 440. When I was mayor, it was up to 490, something like almost 500. And when you consider the fact that we're terribly depleted, you have to add cops. That's number one. Number two, how do you use those resources? Community policing, which I brought in 1992, is all but dead now. They don't have the manpower. You have to reallocate manpower so that you can build these bridges between the community and the police department, police and community action teams, so that the police know what's going on in a neighborhood. Now, you think that's going on now. No, it isn't, because we're just reacting to certain things. We're not being proactive. We're not going in and saying, that's a crack house, let's get swapped. The police department can do this, get swapped to take it over, or get involved in an organization in the neighborhood that can be very cooperative with the police department. And of course, we've got to husband our money, and we should do structured hiring. In other words, we should get rid of lobbyists and those kinds of things, and every time we can come up with money, hire a new cop, because that's very, very important. So it's policing, adding people, it's using resources properly. Having been there, done it and bought the T-shirt, I would have a public safety commissioner. I did that once for a few months, and I think that we need a public safety commissioner, because that role is a civilian role, basically, and that person oversees the police, fire, communications division of our public safety sector. Someone who would be consistent with the philosophy of policing that I have, and that the city council would have, and someone who, look, a public safety commissioner's got to understand. We talk police all the time. What about fire? When I left office, I think the average age of a fire truck, and I'm guessing if PolitiFact is watching, I think it was about 5 or 6 years old. They're like 14 years old now, or 13 years old. The fire stations are in terrible shape. If we don't have, and this is a Chamber of Commerce situation here, if we don't have good fire apparatus and good fire prevention and good response times, watch how your insurance rates will go up in a city when they come in rate. So those are the things that have to be, why you need a public safety commissioner to spend time on those kinds of things, adequate allocation of manpower, and of course having a person who go out in the community and listen and build those community relationships I talked about in the previous question. First of all, I was very much a part of the first Renaissance, when we relocated the rivers and attracted Providence Place Mall and the big stores that are there. Now, we recaptured retail in just one generation. When I was mayor before, we had a lot of festivals. We had certainly Water Fire. We started that with Barnaby Evans. But we had the First Night. We had the Waterfront Festival. We had the Splendor of Florence. We had, and I go on and on, Latin American Film Festival, all those things. And the city seems to have forgotten about that. So I would have to say this. In order to have a second Renaissance, maintain the infrastructure of the brand that we have now, and that is the great restaurants that when I was mayor, we loaned money to all those restaurants, because when we built the convention center, we realized we didn't have enough restaurants. So we had a 1% loan program, and many of the restaurants that you eat in came about from that program. We built the culinary scene. So I think that we have to kind of continue to brand ourselves. When we redid the Providence Performing Arts Center, I insisted that it be called Providence, and Providence Place Mall was going to be Capital Center Mall. I insisted it be Providence Place Mall, because that's branding. But I think that we have to rebrand ourselves and go after foreign tourism, maintain our historic preservation efforts, because we have a great stock of older buildings that really are historic and very interesting. Number two, continue with the festivals and continue in the film industry that has been very successful for the city of Providence. So all those things have, in tourism. Tourism is, I think, the second largest industry in Rhode Island. And continue to brand ourselves as Providence, a place you can come. We have great things in this city. We've got Brown University, RISD, the best schools in the country. We've got Johnson & Wales, the best at what they do. Providence College, all those wonderful schools that we could utilize and also make our infrastructure for our museums. Start paying attention to them. We have great museums here. We have to make sure that we advertise those and improve them.